Hello everyone, welcome to Lunar Reason with Christine. Once a month, me and Christine will be here after full moon, and we will chat a little bit about the current transit and the more likely recent event on the world. And what else can we talk about this moment? Hi Christine, how are you?
Well, Rod, nothing is happening. So what shall we talk about? What's so brilliant about today is that
Yes.
this all-female crew, right, are going up into space today. And I just thought how perfect this is for this Venus station. Isn't it just absolutely delightful? I hope all goes well, but what a day to choose. And what a few days it's been. We knew from that inauguration shot that things might not.
Yeah.
And I was very clear. Really, it's very easy to think that Mr. Trump is all to blame. Well, right. And that's easy. But I think we actually, as astrologers, have to think differently because whoever got that job was going to have that chart, right? It didn't really like whoever got it. So whoever had it was going to have to deal with what is essentially a very difficult picture this year.
True, yes.
Navigating these next few months is going to be really challenging for each of us, right? The solar activity, as you know, is crazy and has been. So it looks as though we might even get what they call a double top up there, like, maximum might last longer than normal.
Yes.
That's kind of quite interesting because if we come away from obviously the planets affect the sun affects the planet. So there's a symbiosis there. But if the sun is really going crazy, right, the effect on life, all forms of it, is such. Are we going into? I'd like to think we were going into a higher level of consciousness. Of course, I would like that. It doesn't always feel like that, but I'd like that to be the case. But it's sort of interesting if you go in the garden, how plants and things, everything is, and if you've got cats or dogs, their reaction to things at the moment is unusual too. So
very directly.
So it's not all about tariffs, is what I'm trying to say. It's not, and I know that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, Neptune went into Aries, blah blah blah," right? Well,
one of things.
It's one of the things, but actually, it's not fully in yet, right? It's not fully in at all, not just because of this retrograde thing, but I find it interesting that heliocentrically, right,
yes,
the more important transit, it doesn't go in until the 23rd of May. So we're still in the kind of limbo thing, getting ready for the big one. And 3 days after that, Saturn makes its geocentric Aries ingress. So I don't really, it's at that point that I think we're really going to start to feel what the Saturn-Neptune is about. Which is, God, Rod, there is so much to talk about. I was listening to the news yesterday, and because I've been reading this book about disease across the world, because I'm into the Saturn-Neptune, and that's one possible thing of it.
True.
I didn't realize that foot and mouth disease is now spreading really fast across Europe. I didn't know, right?
Oh.
Apparently it's very interesting how this is working out. Apparently it was first identified in Hungary. Mr. Orban, the president, is actually saying he's not actually sure that it wasn't virtually man-made, which is terrifying if that's the case. But even if you take that away, it's apparently spread into Germany and is now being found in other places. And apparently, as of today, you can't even, if you buy a sandwich at Paris airport today, you can't bring it into the UK. Right.
Oh.
And they're going to stop cheeses coming in. So the food people are onto this straight away because we don't want a repeat of the foot and mouth. So I find that's been another kind of little interesting thing that I've got into. I've also been reading about oil, right, and the pipelines in the Middle East and how, in fact, the discovery of oil there, I mean, yes, we did know that had upset the balance of power there, but I hadn't realized just how embedded all of that is and the chaos the West has actually brought to the Middle East.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at that as well as also dealing with the tariff nightmare, which we should talk about. So, right, we knew years ago that Chiron was going to be on the full moon yesterday.
Yes.
So you only had to have an ephemeris to know that. Right?
Yes.
So it was reasonable to assume that there would be a market correction around that full moon. Coming on top of what we're calling the retrograde hurricane that began in November. Truly, as I said, you can't just pin this all on Mr. Trump, right? This was coming anyway, right? Redistribution, a reorganization, plus Pluto in Aquarius, plus, right? This is a chaotic activity. So the question is, most of the questions from clients are, when does this stop, right? Is it over yet, right?
It's over yet.
Is it over yet? And of course, a lot of people are thinking, well, because Venus turns around today, that's it. You know, like we're off to the races now. No, we're not. Not because both Mercury and Venus have got to catch up with the degrees that they retrograded at. And remember, they retrograded within a degree of the solar eclipse. So that story is not finished.
Yes, indeed.
Georgia Stathis, who is brilliant. I mean, you know, off the scale brilliant, right? She has always said you need to look at 90 days after an eclipse, right? The 90 days.
Interesting.
Because that's when the sun is squaring itself, obviously.
Yes.
So that is taking us to the back end of June, right? And so that's another significant point. So if I put everything into a row, I have to look at this and think, no, we're not over because, number one, Venus and Mercury haven't caught up. Venus is the last one to catch up. And Venus does that around the full moon. We'll be talking about this in May. And en route to that, Mars has to come back to that 6 degrees Leo. That's at the very beginning of May. Right?
Yes.
Which you and I talked about before. That was an anniversary degree for Pearl Harbor, right?
Yes.
We're not done with possible US naval activity, right? We've got the war signatures still going on, right? I don't even want to have this discussion, but we've also got the Chernobyl anniversaries and things also ringing echoes. So we have Mars returning to its point. We have Venus doing its thing. That's the middle of May.
Yes.
Then we have Neptune, the heliocentric ingress, followed by Saturn, right? And then we hit June, right? And at that point, and this is where Mr. Trump does come into play, at that point, Uranus squares his Mars. Now, I could go on. I could give you a whole list of his chart. But if you just look at that, right, you'd say this show is still set to run, right? And we have Jupiter coming to square Saturn.
Yes, indeed.
Jupiter coming to square Neptune, right? These are all in June. Plus, using Georgia's 90-day thing, actually, we're in for another few weeks of constant turmoil. So I was wondering, because I was watching the news yesterday, because apparently we saved British Steel yesterday. Do you know that the Chinese took that over on March the 16th? It was a Pisces thing. You know, so you can see all the threads, everything all comes together. So I've been thinking, if I had to advise a politician, what would I actually say now, right? What would you say, right? Because you'd have to say reaction isn't going to work. Reaction isn't going to work, right? All you can do is to make sure that your lifeboats and your safety net are in working condition. And yes, it's quite possible that in this process you're going to lose a lot.
Yeah.
So who would envy the decision makers now? You wouldn't.
Yeah, and also quite interesting is that, as I know, most of the politicians, especially country leader, even they're going to get this like a life-saving package ready or something, they still refuse to admit. They don't want to say, we don't want to scare people off. Nothing going to happen. And that was quite interesting. And the market is still, I can see a lot of people around me, they still say, are we there yet? Can we start buying? I was like, wow, you guys are so brave.
Yes, and yesterday, I had two in yesterday on a Sunday. I had two in yesterday saying, Christine, should we buy on Monday? Well, actually, unless you're an experienced trader, the answer to that is probably no, right?
Most of them ask this question of beginner.
Yes, and you think, no, hold on a minute. This is not the time to do it. And actually, yes, obviously, everybody enjoys a little bit of a risk. But this is a casino. This is gambling. That's if you go in today, you are gambling, right? It's not educated risk assessment, because the likelihood is that there are more falls to come, most likely in June, right? But even then, if you're going to buy, right, and this is something I learned years ago, that it is absolutely stupid and foolhardy to think that you're going to buy in at the bottom and sell at the top, right? That's a ridiculous myth, right? You need to buy in at something that is comfortable, right? That you think is okay, I can afford this, and you can afford to lose if it drops 10, 15%, you know, like it's edgy. And I was taught by some brilliant people in the city, you always leave 10% for the next man. So in other words, you come out, right, at a time when you feel, well, I've made some profit, right? You don't get driven by the greed of this, because if you're going to come unstuck. And the other thing is, the two people who rang in yesterday, they were a bit late, by the way, because others had rung in Thursday, Friday. Which signs of the zodiac freak out most? Do you know what?
I don't know. Tell me.
Freaking out thing is, it's the people who've got mutable moons who are most likely to panic.
Interesting. I remember you talking about the market. Oh, the moon moving into mutable sign market usually is a little bit.
It's because people, it's quite simple. People really don't know which way to go, right? So it wobbles a lot. The Asian markets wobble particularly immutable.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Of course, you can't say, if you were to do a research project on this, you'd have to be very careful, because obviously the effect is more extreme if you happen to hit a full moon, as you know, or a new moon. The phases of the moon obviously matter as much, but it's a general thing. If you're thinking of investing and you have a mutable moon, you've really got to have a good conversation with yourself, right? Because markets fluctuate. And if you're going to be really freaked out because it's lost 1% today, right, but you're all excited when it makes 2% the next, you have to be able to go with the waves. It's not a linear climb up. So no, I don't think we're finished with the market blues for this year yet.
Definitely, and I think this also with the Neptune just moving into Aries. I'm not talking about the big picture of the market correction or crazy something, but people already being super optimistic. Nothing can stop us. I know even you see the big correction, they are still like, oh, it's a time. I was like, I'm scared when I hear a lot of people saying that. I say, I'm a little bit scared to hear that. And thank you for your advice. I think that is for a lot of people. If you are a skilled trader, yes, go for it. You know how much you're going to do.
If you're a skilled trader, then you know where to put the stop losses in, right? Control things. But if you haven't got that experience, right, and you really got to think about your mental welfare in this as well.
Definitely, yes.
You put the news on at the moment, right? Even the pundits, they're having a wonderful time, because they're getting a news story every 5 minutes. They must all have ADHD anyway in order to.
Oh, yes.
And they're all in hyper mode. That's the time. That's not the time to be thinking. Astrologers, of course, can actually think a little. We can go long term, right? We know Pluto's going to stay in Aquarius. Now that's it. It's in, right? We also know what's coming up. Uranus is going to go into Gemini, right? You could start to think, which sectors do you think are going to benefit from that? Right?
Yes.
So supposing you were to say, oh, do you know what? I'm really interested in this space age. Do you know, I think I'd get into that.
Yes.
You're not going to make a profit on that in the first year, because Saturn and Neptune are going to be exactly at the midpoint between the Uranus and Pluto, right?
Oh,
yes. But if you want to play longer term, right, because they won't stay there, they'll move off. Saturn will move off relatively quickly, right? If you want to play for a long term and say, well, I'm going for a 6 or 10 year investment, then actually you might get into something now that's really good. Don't know if you saw the news story the other day, but there was a company just outside Cardiff, Space Forge, right? Now you can't buy shares in it yet. It's a privately owned company, but they're doing something really, really clever. They're going to take material into space, right? And they're going to make stuff in space and bring it back. They're going to shorten. It's going to be much easier for them to make this stuff. It's a title. Unfortunately, I looked at its chart and thought, no, well, maybe it's
but
not.
idea is quite cool.
The idea and the name, right? Absolutely terrific, right? And then I'm on another job at the moment, which is also to do with travel, right? And new types of travel. And it's like we've said, we're going to have flying motorcycles, we're going to have jetpacks, we're going,
yes.
These aren't things you're going to make money on tomorrow, right? This, if you go in now, you would be going in really too early.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting that we've been talking about all these things maybe when we prepare 2023, when we are prepare the Pluto into Aquarius, we are already seeing, but when things all come together, it's a little bit scary at this moment when we are in it with, oh my God, and easily to panic, we don't know where to go. But astrology really help us to navigate about it. So talking about your course, how's your financial astrology course running? We have to know.
Well, okay. Well, we have to differentiate between, because there are two courses, right? So we have monthly classes, right?
Yes.
Which, thanks to Julie, this amazing new assistant, she's more than doubled the number of attendees, right?
That's lovely.
Which is incredible. But better still, we're tailor-making those monthly things so that we can include things that people are interested in. Mind you, we need at least 2 or 3 weeks notice. But for example, somebody sent me, very kindly, they've sent me in 2 companies that look as though they might be really interesting. So they'll go for that monthly thing. The module one, the feedback is terrific. The feedback's been really, because we let just a few people buy it to start with. And that won't be for sale properly until Mars has, because we started that off as Mars went retrograde. Do you remember?
Yes.
I was using the whole of the Mars loop to perfect it and get it to a shape that we like. He pointed out this morning that if we go live at the beginning of May, she is going on holiday.
Ah, okay.
So we sort of agreed that actually we'll go live when she comes back, which funnily enough is just as it's at the end of May, and Saturn goes into my opposite sign, of course.
Oh, yes.
Of course, so the timing is that's when it's going to be. So the monthly classes are there. And then I'm doing, have you any idea how much stuff I'm doing? Well, because I'm going to teach some money courses from Synchronicity University. And then I've got your events to look forward to.
Oh, yes, the midpoint, right? Planet picture on the 7th of June.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, we can focus on that. That was so funny. I had to write this piece for the NCGR magazine. And she said she wanted 1,500 words on how I was discussing the Saturn-Neptune conjunction with clients. So, of course, I don't just discuss that, because you can't just discuss that. You need to take into account Uranus and Sedna on one side and Pluto on the other. So you have to talk about it, right? I could not do this damn thing in 1,500 words. Oh God, I couldn't do it. It didn't. So anyway, it's done now, but I think it hit you just impossible to do it in the shaping thing, because you've got to put the whole thing into somebody's chart. And it's so interesting, because if you go to the 9th, I think it's the 9th of August. If you do, any of you do the chart for the 9th of August, what is, you'll have Uranus and Sedna. Well, let's start at the top. You have Saturn and Neptune together. Uranus and Sedna sextile from them, right? Yeah. So Mars will be opposing the Saturn-Neptune, and then 120 degrees this way, right, which will sextile the top. So you will end up with a grand trine with triangle on the top. So you end up with a kite. So, and then what do you think about a kite, right? A kite is an idea. They don't all float nicely, but some of them soar and make people. So I'm working on the idea of, with clients and with me, right, of floating something different. And lovely. And it became funny because I forgot that. I'd been writing about it, but I forgot it. My brain didn't tell me. And I got this lovely email from this lady in Western Australia asking me to do an event for their group. And she said, what would you like to talk about? And I immediately wrote back and said, I think I'd like to do something that I don't usually do, right? So I suggested something. And then I realized that it was that weekend, and that essentially I want to fly a kite.
How interesting. And I like that flying a kite idea. Yes. And so probably during that, everyone should fly a kite.
Well, everybody should fly a kite. let's not be too Pollyanna. Some of these kites are going to crash spectacularly, right? You have to give something a try, right?
Definitely.
And with the
Yes.
world going to hell in a handcart, why not? You know,
Yeah.
we have no control. These tariffs or the discussion about these tariffs is going to go on and on for a few weeks yet.
Yes.
And yes, it's going to cripple a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they can be saved, but I think the kite analogy is not a bad idea to think what else could be floated.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Christine. Thank you for sharing so much with us. And this is so fun. From a little bit uncertain and scary for what we see for last week. And now we are, okay, at least we get ready and we get some idea what may coming up.
Well, let's wish safety to these female astronauts today.
Oh, definitely, yes.
This is really quite extraordinary. I'm going to look at the chart. But good to see you. And when we meet next time, right, we will discuss Venus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching Lunar Rhythm today, and thank Christine for joining us. And so we'll see you next month.
And I've been waiting in the shadow of the sun.